Pulling is the best place to start with our rings training because when we're below the rings, the instability is much less. However, when we're above the rings, the freedom and instability that they allow make movements significantly harder. This brings us on nicely to the second part of this series, which is push. So, stability is what creates ability. The more stable we are, the more able we are to exert force. We're going to be stronger. Whereas we might be relatively strong with movements like push-ups or dips in normal circumstances, when we take them to the rings, that instability is going to make the movement significantly harder and challenge us to continue to progress. So whilst it can be tempting to jump straight in and do some ring dips, we first want to understand how to stabilize and control ourselves on the rings, which brings us on to the first exercise of this routine, which is the ring support. The ring support is the starting position when we're training anything above the rings. If you try this position and it's especially challenging or you're shaking uncontrollably, we can use a resistance band looped under the hands and under the knees to reduce the load and also help to bring the rings close together. We want to focus on keeping the arms straight, pressing down hard, depressing the shoulders. We want to keep the hands nice and tight towards the sides and then also try to externally rotate and turn the rings outwards. Initially, holding for 10 to 15 seconds might be challenging. So to achieve that total amount of time per set, you might want to break it into 3 or 4 shorter holds, resting 5 to 10 seconds between each. Now, most of the time I would add support holds at the end of a session, but I want to add it at the beginning here because it's more of a skill than a strength move. It's the most neurologically taxing element. We're trying to learn how to control ourselves on the rings, so we want to do it when we're fresh and not fatigued. Let's jump into the rest of the strength training. The best place to start is with the ring push-up. This is because in this position, we have both our feet to help stabilize us, but we're able to mimic a position that looks very similar to a dip and build up more volume and get stronger. We're going to start in a position that feels much like the ring support. We're going to have the hands externally rotated and pulling inwards with the arms locked. As we lower, keep the arms and elbows close to the side, allowing the hands to rotate naturally in the bottom position. Make sure you finish every single rep with a complete lockout, turning the rings out in the top position. To scale this one, we can do so in a similar way to the bodyweight row. The more vertical we are with our body position, the easier this movement is. As we move closer to a more horizontal position, we're going to place more load through the hands, less load through the feet, and the movement's going to become harder. Another way to bridge the gap towards the ring dip is to perform an assisted version. This is going to be a more tricep dominant exercise where we use the feet in front of us to take a little bit of weight off and support the movement. We're going to start in a support position with the hips between the hands and our feet taking some weight by pressing the heels into the ground. We want to perform a dip motion going as low as we can and then pressing out of the feet to put ourselves back into that top position. All the same good form cues apply. Keep the rings turned out, the arms locked. We finish under control and with a full lockout. Let's move on to some accessory movements and build up those triceps, another important part of this pushing strength. We're also going to do this in a plane that we haven't touched yet, which is with the arms in an overhead position. This movement allows us to make the most of the rings moving to feel comfortable on the hands. We're going to start in a pronated position with the palms facing forward, but as we lower, we want to allow the rings to rotate into a more of a neutral position with the thumbs facing back. The focus should be on pressing out of the triceps. To make this movement easier, we start in a more vertical position, and if we want to increase the intensity, we move to a more horizontal position. Finally, to balance out all of that pushing, it's worth doing a bit of rotator cuff exercise that helps to stabilize us in these pushing movements. And for that, we can use the ring baseball. This movement is slightly more challenging than it appears, and it's worth starting slow and building up. Like in the push-up, the more vertical we are, the easier this movement is, and the more horizontal we go, the harder it becomes. The focus here should be first bringing the shoulder blades back and together, and then pulling the chest up and trying to pull the hands behind the face at a 90-degree angle on both elbows. Pause for a second in this top hardest position and then lower under control. As always, the full routine will be available in the description down below, along with any other resources that might be useful to explain these movements further. But knowing is nice, doing is better. Go give this one a go and let me know how you get on in the comment section down below. In terms of actually using both of these routines, the push and the pull, I'd recommend performing them at a frequency of 1 to 2 times per week. 1 time a week if you're starting out, You've got less recovery capacity 2 times a week if you have a little bit more and you're more experienced. But other than that, make sure you hit that subscribe button, join the channel, don't miss out on any future videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a strong week. Peace. And then making sure we finish each... I'm shaking.